This section is probably one of the most complicated because it is concerned with students making learning leaps, breakthroughs in their thinking, working at a conceptual, critical and creative level, which is suitable for a good piece of research, a very good thesis or dissertation. And the moment that I'm thinking about, probably several moments, several stages in their work, we've labelled conceptual threshold crossings, because they're making these learning leaps, these breakthroughs in their thinking. And these lead to more complex thinking, more complex expression, and a real contribution to knowledge. So it's important that students have these breakthrough moments. So sometimes they're called aha moments in their research journeys. But they're quite difficult sometimes to spot or to nudge. And our role as supervisors, I think, is about nudging them, enabling students to do various bits of work, to see the achievements that they have in the work and the achievements they have in expressing it in their writing. So what are these conceptual threshold crossings? Work carried out on undergraduate student research by Eric Mayer, Ray Land and Glynis Cousin explored the ways in which you construct knowledge differently, see the world differently in different disciplines. And they called the different concepts, if you like, the absolutely essential concepts that students need to understand in these different disciplines in order to construct knowledge and see the world as a biologist or a historian. Threshold concepts. So they argued that undergraduate students, masters, PhD students, everybody needs to grasp the 2 or 3 or 4 maybe threshold concepts in each of their disciplines to understand how knowledge is created. So, for instance, if you are an artist or a literature person, the threshold concept of representation, things stand for, they represent something, they're not just copies of the real, would be one that you'd really need to understand. I'm not going to explore threshold concepts in any depth, but to move on a bit and to say that this led us to think about moments at which postgraduate students in their research start to make these learning leaps. In other words, they already understand the threshold concepts of their disciplines, and now at different stages in their learning journeys, they make these learning leaps, and they're revelations, and they cause them to see construction of knowledge and the world and their contribution to it differently, critically, conceptually and creatively. So the whole idea derives from threshold concepts, but it's about stages or moments of making learning leaps and breakthroughs, conceptual threshold crossings. The moment before you understand that you suddenly understood something properly and knew, and you've got something to say about it, is a liminal moment, a moment just before you cross that threshold, a moment where you might feel a bit confused. So sometimes students find it very challenging. They come up against a new idea or something that comes out of their research or something in the reading which is confusing, which challenges everything that they've thought of before. In conceptual threshold crossings, just like in threshold concepts, that would be considered to be troublesome knowledge. It troubles, it upsets things they've taken for granted previously, and it causes them to start to think differently. In fact, then to feel confident to make some kind of contribution themselves. So it's uncomfortable because you find your previous beliefs and understandings challenged. And that might come from reading something very complex or something that's contested where you didn't think there was an argument, there wasn't a contestation in the field, or reading the work of a complex theorist who suddenly makes you see things from a different perspective. Or sometimes it happens through carrying out field work, where actually doing the work in the right place means that you link things together in a new manner. Or through carrying out an experiment that doesn't turn out quite as you'd expected. Or through reading, or through writing. Sometimes through writing, a student will engage with their ideas and with their data in such a way as they start to create knowledge. And this is exciting and at first tentative, but it's exhilarating. They're making something new, and then they go back and make sure they make it as firm and as well expressed as they can. So these conceptual threshold crossings, these breakthroughs in learning, take place at all sorts of different stages in a student's learning journey when they're undertaking postgraduate work. And one of the first stages is perhaps where they define their research question and they realise what it is that's new that they're asking about and how they're going to ask it. Or they define their hypothesis and they start to think, what is it they're going to test and how are they going to test it? So that might be a crucial moment where they start to work at this level. Another crucial moment takes place in the literature review when they see their work as entering a dialogue with other work in the field. And we thought about that a little earlier in this set of sessions or modules on this online site. But it actually can really take place at all of those moments, at reading, in the field. Sometimes students really understand what they're finding out, what their argument is, their contribution to knowledge, when they have to defend their work in a symposium with others, in a conference with others, or at one of those transfer or progress report moments. So sometimes it's about, for us as supervisors, setting up some of these moments because they might not happen naturally, putting students in touch with others so that they work together and present their work to each other. They have to pull it together. Some of the students that we researched with on a very long doctoral learning journeys project that I led a few years ago said that their work was all bitty and fragmented and they couldn't see any shape, they couldn't see the argument. But they felt they'd crossed a conceptual threshold. They felt they really understood, had ownership and confidence in their work. When they had to pull it together, they had to sort of step back and see what I define as like the mountain ranges and the rivers in their work. There's the major arguments, the major contributions, how things fit together. Instead of just seeing everything as bitty, as representing having done a lot of work, but not really knowing what it's arguing, what it stands for. So we can set up moments, conferences, symposia, these checking moments of transfer, etc. And also by asking specific questions, which causes them to think, so what? So what does this contribute? How does that theory help me ask these questions? So I think at all sorts of different stages then in their work, when they start to make breakthroughs in their learning, they're uncomfortable, it's troublesome knowledge, it's transformational, they never see things as simply again. They also feel more confident because they know what their contribution is. These are moments that we can nudge as supervisors through questions, through reading, through opportunities to share and pull their work together.